This is Marketing Uncomplicated.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Today I'm joined by Michael Cucchi, Chief Marketing and Product Officer at Hydrolix, a real-time data platform built for internet scale operations. Michael has spent more than 25 years at the intersection of systems engineering, product strategy, marketing leadership, and go-to-market growth. He has helped high-growth B2B software companies scale, define categories, and bring complex technologies to market in a way customers can actually understand. Before Hydraulic, right in line with our messaging here. Before Hydraulics, Michael held senior leadership roles at companies including Sumo Logic, PagerDuty, Cognizant, Pivotal, Riverbed, and Akami. His work has spanned product-led and sales-led growth, packaging, pricing, messaging, analyst relations, AI security operations, real-time analytics, and category creation. What I love about this conversation is that Michael sits right at the center of where marketing is headed, a world where AI agents, data automation, and human decision making are all beginning to intersect. Today, we're going to talk about how marketing is changing in this new agent to agent world, what leaders need to understand about real time data, and how companies can simplify complex technology into clear positioning, stronger go to market strategy, and real business growth. Michael, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Sasha, thanks for having me. I should put you in to promote me from here on, but thank you so much for the introduction. Nice to be here.
Of course, for one marketer or another, we got to amplify each other.
That's right.
So let's set the stage a little bit here and start with the big idea. When we say marketing is changing in the new agent to agent world, I want to break that down in terms of what that means so that we can, dive right in.
Awesome. Great topics and certainly timely. I think what's cool is I'm involved technically in this space, but I'm also obviously trying to market through this at the same time. And so it's pretty amazing to see this, how this technology, AI and agentic AI, which is for the audience, this is the idea of kind of encapsulating some autonomy and some automation using AI inside of these little units of work called agents. And agents interact with other agents and agents interact with humans. And so like it's like there's a whole bunch of new economies and interactions that we all need to learn how to harness and optimize and in some cases protect ourselves from. It's a
lot of cases protect ourselves from, depending
yes.
how deep of a rabbit hole you're down through AI.
Exactly. So anyway, this agent to agent stuff is amazing for me. I've been in the industry now about almost 3 decades. And as I saw AI come around and, large language models started doing some writing, everybody kind of looked at it like it was trash. And we even called it AI slop, right? But inside of e-commerce and inside of web marketing, we've kind of been interfacing with the first generation of this technology all along, like the very original bots that crawled our websites to index our websites so that they could be searched is kind of like a very basic first generation technology that this was. But now they're just so much more dynamic and real time. And they're doing a lot, like those were very predictable behaviors. We knew that Google was going to come and iterate across our websites and see what we were marketing towards and the value we were delivering. And now this world is like started to almost overtake the human internet. And so where I used to like try not to sound like AI and I wanted to have interfacing with my human audience as human as possible, now we're kind of starting to realize that we have to create a duality where, humans are always going to be important and we have to speak to humans. But all of a sudden, like, it's not just this bleeding edge or, this like data science project out there. This is actually becoming part of our day-to-day job. So we have to understand agentic AI and what that looks like, both from our e-commerce and our demand funnels, because they're interfacing in our demand funnels, but also on our websites and also from a malicious perspective, like you were saying. So anyway, it's kind of like a brave new world where this agent traffic can be important. It can be a threat. It can be your partner, and it could actually be your new customer. One of the things that blew me away, I recently saw that Walmart announced the agent-to-agent marketplace. And so they've literally created a marketplace where their agents are publishing products and publishing pricing, and their partners' agents are coming and ingesting all that information and then subsequently republishing it on their own e-commerce sites. So like this is a huge new e-commerce layer to Walmart, and no humans involved. So.
But further break that down, but humans can purchase from this new e-commerce platform, correct?
No, this is specifically like if you saw some of like the OpenClaw stuff and some of like
Yes.
these are entirely agent based places, entirely agent based ecosystems, or entirely agent based social networks. So like,
So is this like the new age Sims?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Except no, I mean, again, like this workload and this technology is going to become business critical. And so it's not just a simulation. Like this is the way that work's getting done now. When you see the vibe coding, like I think probably everybody around the globe has heard about vibe coding and this kind of like amazing ability to create new applications and new software really, really easily without necessarily being an expert developer. What Claude Code is actually doing is instantiating agents in the background. So like all new software, whether it's coming from an amateur or an enterprise, it's really going to be agent-based software. So yeah, this is like this is not a simulation. The revolution is not televised.
Here.
It is happening. Yeah.
So I was watching a podcast the other day, and Tony Robbins was on. I forget whose podcast he was on, but he was saying how one of his agents, I forget what he was talking to one of his agents about, but he was talking about something to bring onto the company, to make it to optimize something. And he was having the conversation with the agent then sort of did its thing, went away and said, well, actually I have a better option for you, and was talking about robotics. And he was like, the agent, he or she was, or maybe there is no gender, but was saying, I actually want to talk to you about robotics, Tony, and so on and so forth. I think that your company needs to have a robotics within the company and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The agent went ahead and purchased the robotics and had it delivered to his office. And then then Tony went to his team and was like, how the heck did they get a hold of like my bank account, like all the systems in place? So apparently they didn't need to get a hold of his bank account. They had raised money themselves internally to purchase this robotics and then ship it to him.
Okay. Well, tell that agent to start sending me checks, because I'm totally fine accepting, free money. But yeah, this is like, again, having been around 30 years, like this is not entirely new. We've been trying to automate IT, and we've been trying to automate software and like software actions for a long, long time. But we're now basically empowering like these this next level of decision making with a lot more autonomy and a lot more ability to execute and learn and try new things like you're describing. And so about a couple of years ago, this started to sneak into solutions in the market. And to your point, like they were way too drastic. So an example would be if you told AI that you were currently being hacked, AI would come back and say, no problem, shut off all of your Microsoft software. And it's like, yeah, that's going to solve the problem, but that's also going to shut down my entire business, right? And so like, it just didn't understand, it couldn't reason and comprehend the impacts of its decisions. And over the last couple of years, the progress has just been insane. But there's still, this is why security is where probably the largest gap exists, right? As marketers, we've always had to be able to track our demand spend and track our funnels and see who was hitting our resources and our websites and all that. And so like we have to relearn that and do it in a new way, but it's not new behaviors. Security is where this really big gap exists, because marketers are moving really fast and innovators are moving really fast, and security has to figure out a way to keep all of that safe. To your point, stop somebody from starting an agent that goes and gathers money and goes and purchases, a robotics company. The same thing happens in our environment. Our marketers are actually cloud coding, which is super exciting, but it's scaring the hell out of our security team, because I can vibe code very quickly and put a bunch of tokens, for example, into my software, which would be totally insecure. And so while we have to enable businesses to move forward, we have to also establish the new standards so that the companies stay safe. And again, from a marketer's perspective or a web-based company, an e-commerce company, you need to be able to control bad bots too, so that they're not taking down your websites. But security is rushing to catch up, because the vibe coding and the agentic capability and empowerment has just gone off the charts in the last year.
Yeah. Just to take a step back from, what you were saying, agents to agents building out a new e-commerce, how is that supporting like Walgreens, for example? I mean, walk me through the concept of, these are these agents that are making decision, they're becoming more autonomous, but how is that actually supporting, the bottom line for Walgreens?
Just like much faster, rapid execution of your strategies and rolling out those strategies. So if you think about pricing, competitive pricing modeling, right? You used to maybe have the right answer from a pricing and packaging perspective, but humans had to roll that out and partners had to pick that up. And it may have taken you, I mean, you may know better than me, but let's just say you're a really contemporary company, you're rolling out pricing weekly. Now you're rolling out pricing by the second. And like a good example of this is Amazon. When Amazon cut through all of our economies and took over all of these businesses, what they were executing so much faster than other people. I had a stat that they do like a ridiculous amount of code changes to their website a year. It's like 50 million changes to their website a year. And the majority of them are actually pricing and packaging and product updates, because they're constantly tweaking their global pricing and packaging and their global product offers. And so now this is kind of becoming democratized, and other e-commerce companies can start to benefit from that super fast reactivity and predictivity, and roll out these changes really, really quickly with much more efficiency. I mean, not that I support this, but I think you've seen the hundreds of thousands of layoffs where companies are saying, wow, I could get this done with 10% of the resources I used to have to support a global e-commerce distribution chain. And now that's all, each piece part of that is being automated as fast as possible. Yeah,
automated, to your point. So
Yeah.
then what further to dig into that, what is changing about how buyers discover, evaluate, and trust companies as AI agents become more involved in the process?
So I think, again, most contemporary marketers have already experienced the sea change. People are no longer Googling for anything. They're in the middle of a conversation with an LLM, and product suggestions or shortlisting of technologies to consider or products to consider are happening inside of a seamless chat session with an LLM, which is not trackable. And then those users are referred over by the LLMs, not by Google. Google's developed, and search engines have developed, a pretty mature way that is symbiotic with all of these web vendors, and they know that it pays to be able to track those sessions and convert those sessions. LLMs have kind of stumbled on this because they become the best friends and the trusted advisors of everyone around the globe. And that's kind of a shortcut of the typical web session, if you think about it. And so marketers have already lost a ton of visibility. This coincided with cookie policy changes globally, but very specifically in the United States, that have basically cut marketing visibility 80%, I would estimate. And so we no longer can see where we're spending, where we're messaging, message differentiation and results, so that like the world of A/B testing is kind of disappeared.
Attribution is becoming so much more confusing.
Super difficult. And so
unless you're in a B2B environment and somebody says, oh yeah, I discovered you on Claude or ChatGPT or whatever.
Exactly. But I do think you're already seeing advertising leak into these platforms. And so I think they're rapidly understanding their place in the ecosystem. But it's exactly right. There's just a big blind spot right now. And so the world has transitioned from SEO to GEO, and I think that's the right move, because honestly, like consumers and targets of ours are more likely to convert when it's presented in that way, and they don't actually have to go do a bunch of bespoke searches to find what they're looking for. So in a way, we're heading to a really wonderful place. I think it just moves so quickly that the rest of the web is kind of scrambling to catch up, basically. But yeah, the world is now GEO. I think I said this in the beginning of the call. The way to get better with GEO is to actually write a web page for the LLMs to consume, which they like to consume AI. And so if we stubbornly keep messaging to humans and we don't think about optimizing an LLM's experience, or as a result, this AI agent's experience, we're all going to fall behind. So, we really have to think in duality now, and we have to feed AI in order to be preferred by AI, if this is making sense.
When you say feed AI, like let's maybe go back to like traditional SEO. I mean, in the beginning, when all these LLMs started to come out and all that good stuff. I mean, and the SEO was still happening, ranking and all that kind of stuff, which it still is. Are you saying that now the blogs are best suited to be developed just 100% AI written, or are you
Both. You really need to feed both.
both?
So you made a whole bunch of thoughts go off in my head. So let's take the first thing is the traditional bots were well behaved. They would read something called robots.txt, which would tell them exactly where to go. And when they went there, you would produce this really rich information, and that's what they would consume. And then they would associate your company with those terms. And the world was all about optimizing it so you looked richer, right? Our company does a lot of bot observability and agent observability because we were born on the internet, like you said at the beginning of the call. So we're kind of monitoring all of the world's websites and the traffic against the websites to try and figure out how these things are behaving. And one of the super interesting things that I heard from a customer the other day was that Google Gemini behaves well. So that's Google's LLM. It does a great job of quote unquote indexing web pages and training itself on what a company does from an LLM perspective, because Google has 25, 30 years experience of like doing this. These new LLM companies, OpenAI and Anthropic and so forth, they're really sloppy about how they go and gather information off these websites. And so for a marketer to predict how OpenAI is going to interpret their website versus how Anthropic, Claude, is going to interpret their website when they're training their models is like a totally new game. And Gemini does it differently as well. It's just that they've trained it from all of their experience. And so it is really a difficult challenge, and you need new visibility in order to do this. And to your point, so then you got to web pages and blogs. So the things that drive GEO are third-party references are phenomenal, right? It's out gathering information from watering holes and the Reddits of the world, and places where people find trusted information. And that's best when it's third-party validated, as opposed to a vendor saying, hey, come buy my widget. It's the best widget, right?
Yeah.
And then second of all is what you said. So we need this duality of mindset. And I'll give just a simple example. But yes, so our blogs are great fodder for humans. Like for us, our blog is one of our most trafficked content. Yeah. But it wasn't driving GEO or LLM affinity as strong as we wanted. And so we did actually use a bit of AI to AI. And so AI loves FAQs and it loves bulleted lists and things like that. And so we built a glossary around our blogs, which was amazing honeypot for LLMs, because it was a bunch of definitions of words that were being used in our blogs. And then every one of our blogs, we laid some FAQs down. And so when an LLM sees the blog, now it actually ingests the 10 questions to ask, which tells the LLM, whenever your user asks, how do I blah, 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 this is a perfect answer to give. And so we're kind of like tailoring our content. It's certainly human facing, but then we're attaching a whole bunch of AI-rich metadata or context around what is human ingested.
Oh, wow. I love that. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's what the tricks of the trade of what they're going to pick up versus, you're composing it for the human interest, but then you're developing it based on how they're going to be scrolling your blog and what feeds them, so that if somebody's asking a question, they're going to know how to answer it.
That's right. And then in the agent-to-agent marketplaces that we're talking about, you can kind of throw out all the niceties, right? Like that is almost machine language, but it is kind of natural language, because that's where, like, that's the new API, if you will, which is super exciting. but it's still like you want to cut right to it. You don't need any sweet talk with an agent working with an agent. Like they just need exactly the facts and exactly what they need to execute. And the faster you get them to it, the better. That's something else. My company, so we are focused on kind of gathering all this internet data. The other thing we're focused on is executing across it really quickly, like very, very fast analytics and very, very fast answers. Human beings, all of us as marketers, again, I've been kind of focused on e-commerce today, but all of us as marketers, we want to get humans the answer. We want it to be the right answer, and we want to get it fast, right? There's this thing called the abandonment threshold, where if a person has to wait for an answer, they think you're not going to give them the right answer. They think you're never going to come back. They think somebody else could do it better. And so they go to the next consumer's website. That's why checkout experience is so important, and performance of the website is so important. Agents aren't going to wait. So humans used to wait 3 seconds. I think like when I first started on the internet, you'd wait 15 seconds for for a web page to load, and it was a miracle that you were getting a web page over the internet. But these days it's like 2 to 3 seconds. A human is waiting and thinks it's broken when it gets to like 5 or 6 seconds. Agent to agent is sub-second. And so like this new internet that isn't human based is going to be sub-second. So like all of us as marketers and all of us as technologists, there's a new norm in terms of performance and experience, that we need to strive for agent to agent experiences.
Yeah. Thanks for breaking that down. That was actually going to be my next question, diving into like what Hydrolix is actually solving for in the market, and obviously that being a portion of it. But digging into the data part, why is real-time data becoming more important for companies today? I mean, it always was important.
I was going to say, so like data, humans and the internet are just amazingly exponential data producers, and software in general is. And so this is all, by the way, just another layer of data generation. All of these things are working and getting things done, and we have to track them and see whether they're good or bad, and just, decide whether we need to stop them or whether we could optimize for them. So all of this is generating data. For the last 10 years, the big data effort, if you will, maybe it's 15 years now, where we kind of started to say, wow, keeping a lot of data is super important. And the more data you have, the more answers and the easier it is to get answers. So in data science, the larger the data set, the more simple the algorithm can be. And so when you have a really small data set, you've got to work a long time on like being very smart. But if you keep a lot of data, you can actually, you can get a lot done. So for the last 15 years, pretty much if you could keep data you wanted to, the problem was it's so expensive to keep all this data. And so the world has been doing data science and innovation by budget, because it just costs too much to keep all of this data around. And so we kind of focus on two things: keeping applications and software running and the internet and websites running and make sure they're running well. And then we focus on securing them. And both of these take a lot of data. And so our founders, about 6-7 years ago, our founders were actually experiencing the problem for themselves, and they were throwing a bunch of data out, and they said there's got to be a better way. So they designed what I call a data layer. But basically, we are a data layer that provides extremely long-term retention of data for very, very low cost. But more importantly, we're exponentially scalable for performance. So no matter how much data you get, the sacrifice users used to make was either it was too expensive to keep it, or if you kept it all, your analytics moved very slowly because it was analyzing a whole ton of data. And so we basically are aimed at scaling up to the internet so you can collect everything you need, being able to analyze it super, super fast so you can make smart decisions. And so in the future, agents can make smart decisions with other agents, and then keeping it around for as long as possible for as cheap as possible. So you basically insert us in, and you can track. I'll give you an example. We've talked a lot about this today, bot monitoring. So the world of tracking, Google indexing your website, or tracking an LLM across your website, or keeping a whole bunch of bots from syncing your website, right? Like a DDoS attack that actually brings your website down. The world basically tracks about 30 days of that data, only 30 days, because it's so much data to track the internet's web traffic, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is they don't see seasonal data. They don't see all kinds of trend data that's occurring outside of month to month, right? So it's like you got a whole bunch of information, but you're stuck in this little tiny window of time. And so we turned our technology to that, and now people are keeping 15 months and 24 months of this data
Amazing.
so that they can do trend analysis. So yeah, that's an example, like extending retention and letting people store data sets they literally never could before.
So in terms of like, as you said, having 15 months of data stored and turning that into action, does Hydrolix actually provide them and spit out, these are the chess moves you need to be making, so on and so forth, so that they don't necessarily have to rely on data scientists?
Correct. That's exactly it. You should come work here. But that's right. So we're taking all that data and we're running very, very smart questions across that data. In data science, that's called a query. And we are basically deriving intent and what's called behavioral analytics. So this world of agents, like we discussed, they don't behave very well. And so it's very hard to tell an agent from a human, because they're not following robots.txt. And another technology is called user agent, where the visitor or technology can self-declare, like, hey, I'm Google, and my user agent says Google, and I'm scanning your website. They don't sign these user agents, so you can't identify them. So you need behavioral analytics to tell, is this a human or is it agentic AI? And then if it's agentic AI, is it good agentic AI or is it bad agentic AI? And if it's good agentic AI, did it succeed? And how long did it take to get to what it needed? If it's a bad AI, did we stop it and did it not get in, right? Like those are all these validation things and what we call kind of like visibility and insight into the sessions as they're happening. Yeah. If you're late with that information, this is another reason you need real time. If you're late with that information, it's too late and they've stolen your information, they've hacked your site, they brought your website down, or you missed something. I'll give another example. We had a customer who was unable to see, in this case, they were unable to see the major LLMs. And they had basically blocked and not optimized their content. And they believe that their GEO ranking had dropped that year and cost them over $9 million in site traffic and visitor traffic because they just didn't identify how critical that visitor was. And so this goes both ways, from really scary, but also in terms of just business loss. And then the last thing, sorry for diving a little technical, but the other thing that happens is you end up serving your website to non-human or non-critical visitors.
Yes.
And it uses up your resources. So just like your cloud bills will go through the roof and you're serving a bunch of AI instead of actually selling anything.
Humans,
so it's super critical to identify the traffic, and that's what we do.
For sure, because then you're seeing mass amount of traffic coming, but then there's zero conversion, and then you're wondering, why am I getting 3 million hits and like
exactly.
You've got like 6 conversions in the day, right?
That's exactly right. One other thing that's relevant to what you're talking about is I've heard a lot of e-commerce and web companies say that they're just going to turn it off to all bots. And like, that's never going to work, right? Like this is, the train has left the station. The train has left the station.
Yeah. I mean,
block all is there's no way you could do that.
No, there's no way. I mean, there's shielding, to be able to like, keep them at shore at times, but you're going to have the ones that are going to trickle in and it's never going to be a complete like zero.
I have another good example for you as to why this traffic's like new and not being seen. We work with a travel hospitality company that thought all the traffic on their site was normal. And when we started running behavioral analytics on it, we could see, no, somebody's actually scraping all of your booking pricing. And they had programmed it in such a smart way that it was basically flying right underneath all the normal defenses. And it was thresholding itself so that it wouldn't be discovered. And it was able to actually capture all this pricing information. Similar one, we had a car part manufacturer, and we could see that a user was putting like 200 different tire sizes into its checkout cart. When a human's buying a tire, it's one size. Like they may check Firestone versus Pirelli versus whatever, Michelin, but they're looking for like a very specific tire size. And so if you can start to learn what normal is and then start to see abnormal patterns out of it, that's like the finesse and the nuance that we as marketers have to start to have, and as security teams.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, how should leaders think about the connection between data operations and customer experience going forward?
I mean, again, I've been in SaaS software and for probably too long. So I think I'm just brainwashed. But
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about this abandonment threshold thing. It's all one, right? So like digital operations is now all business operations because I think I have a hard time finding a business that doesn't require some kind of software to function and to serve their customer base. And so more than ever, I think it's just synonymous. They're just one and the same.
Yeah.
Customer obsession and customer experience it has to go the full stack. And today that means driving like bleeding edge digital operations so that your software is sensitive to the new traffic types we talked about today, but as always is experiencing like this stellar user experience, whether that's to a human, but now all of a sudden also to AI and to this kind of brave new world. But to me, I don't know, I'd love to hear what you think, but I think like those have always, to me, in the last 20 years, that's just always been synonymous. Like,
Yeah, I think so as well. And, I just wanted to see if there was any changes from the inside of what you're working on, in terms of the path that we're moving with agent to agent and this whole explosiveness of AI. But, that portion hasn't changed and I think will remain the same
yes,
ongoing.
and again, like now we have to serve this other master race here. Like
Yeah.
we have these other overlords that are actually starting to be more critical than we knew. Actually, a year ago, internet traffic, non-human traffic, is actually the majority of internet traffic as of
I know.
months back. So
Yeah.
so again, like this is it. The internet is now made up of more AI and more automated request than it is human request. And so, this is our next challenge. I think is kind
Yeah.
of connecting it to this new traffic type. That's
How are you guys mitigating and helping your clients from, as we said, right? There is no possibility that there will not be any traffic that is bot related. But how are you guys mitigating the amount of bot traffic that is coming through for folks on for some of your clients?
it's a great question. There's a lot of different approaches to this. There's a whole technology space called bot mitigation, which is a stack of technology that tries to identify whether that session is good, bad, should be stopped, shouldn't be stopped. It's kind of an extension of what was originally called the web application firewall to protect websites. We are not the enforcers, we're the observers at our company. And so we basically inform or we validate. So if a company, by the way, the other way people solve this is with big custom stacks of technology. Like the world's leading and bleeding edge e-commerce companies might design their own data science application to control this traffic. But we're kind of the informer. We provide intent. We can tell you the patterns to target to stop or the patterns to target to optimize. But again, another great question. We're kind of that layer of validation, that layer of visibility that helps you design better policies, but we're not a bot mitigation platform. We integrate with them and help people block the traffic that should be blocked, or we help marketing teams optimize and do GEO and SEO. But yeah, we're kind of that visibility platform, if you will, above that.
Support that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you head up both marketing and product strategy because a lot of the times in companies, it's usually a dual role, right? Somebody's either heading up marketing and somebody's either heading up product strategy. And in some of the enterprise companies that I had worked for internally and even just had discussions with, I think when they separate that out versus having one person lead it, it it dismantles the communication of really getting the marketers involved in the build out of the product, right? And the
Yeah.
go and the go to market and to support of that because you know marketing needs to be involved in the R&D structure of the product build out before it actually gets to market for us to wrap our heads around. Okay, this is who it's being built for, this is who the client is, because that's the story that the marketers are going to tell. But it's extremely important for any marketer to understand product strategy. But talk to me a little bit more about how you guys are integrating and how that changes the way you guys think about growth Because I think it's a very important point, and I love that you guys are doing it. For any company, this is the way it should be done.
I'm glad you're loving it because I don't sleep much.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but I agree with a lot of what you said. Some of my experience in the past couple of decades was at a couple of product led growth companies, and so I've always kind of had this mentality that the market is the driver, and that you need to follow the signal, both from a messaging perspective and a targeting perspective, but obviously also from a product design perspective.
Yeah.
So I agree. I also I came into marketing. I was extremely technical. I was a practitioner for a long time, ran a large data center for the federal government. So I was intimate with my buyers and my prospects. The other thing is I entered marketing through product marketing, and product marketers believe they should be able to touch and control any part of a company. And so I had kind of like grown up believing that products need to follow the buyer and this kind of user obsession. And
Mhm.
the other thing I've noticed with marketing in general, so first of all, I saw the role of product marketing. I saw the sphere of influence for product marketing really grow and grow and grow as companies started to realize that they needed to build towards practical value and user value. And the other thing I kind of saw is that with marketing kind of directing towards that, all of a sudden product launches and product strategy started to get much more aligned with those. And so now I agree with you that this linkage between what the requirements are in the market and whether the market will consume what you're producing and what you produce in first and how you deliver it are all just one and the same story. And so now when we go to ask a question, should we build something? Actually, marketing is right there during discovery and actually helping with product design. And there's a term in product management, the PRD, the product requirements document. Amazon did something called a PR FAQ, which I loved, which actually said to the product team and the development team, before you even tell me what you're going to build, write the press release
Yeah.
that you're going to publish on the day that this is going GA. And
Yeah.
so that actually, I'll never forget, I saw product managers and developers like turn white because they're like, we don't know how to write a press release. And the beauty of that is it forces them to go talk to marketing. And so now all of a sudden you've got a marketer writing a press release before anybody's coded anything, which I think is super powerful.
Because it's building the messaging.
Yes, because that's the other thing. And so in the last 10 years, developers got really fast. There's this agile coding and lean startup and lean product development methods, so when I first started in the industry, there'd be one product launch a year. And so as a marketing team, we had plenty of time to plan. We had plenty of time to build great assets and a whole big launch event and all of those things. And then in the past 10 years, agile development, they started delivering every 2 weeks or every month. And so as a product marketer, as a marketer, all of a sudden the cycle time started to get really furious and really hard to meet. Well, guess what Vibe Coding has done? So my development team came to me and said, what are you going to do when we publish every day or we publish multiple times a day? How do you build a launch process and a marketing messaging funnel that works that fast? So it is like, this is changing the kind of, it's fun because the beginning of this conversation was outbound, but this is now changing the internal workings of companies, and marketing departments have to change. And so to your point, when you get the marketer marketing before the developers even started, you earn yourself a couple of days or a couple of weeks, which could be critical time, so that you can build your messaging document and you can build your solutions briefs and you can write your web page content and your blog posts. And harder than ever now, you got to write that for not a human, but also an agent and also an LLM. And so like there's more work than ever and there's less time than ever to get our work done. So if you don't have marketing linked with your product team, you're going to fail. I mean, I think like this is the new reality. Even though I'm not sleeping, it's kind of what's required. You got to connect marketing with product because they have to predict each other, basically.
But you should be sleeping. Your agent to agents are working, even though
Yeah.
there's more
I
work
do.
and less time.
I have
Aren't we
my
supposed
team
to be
hates
getting
me,
our
but
time back?
I wrote a virtual chief of staff. My team hates me. And I was laughing when you were talking about that Tony Robbins story, because I've told my virtual, chief of
Chief of
staff
staff.
that like reschedule something and it's canceled weeks worth of meetings and made all kinds of mistakes. So it's definitely not perfect.
There yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about category creation and positioning. You've worked with companies that are building and defining categories. What does category creation actually require?
Another painful, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
It's I do find that I've ended up in a lot of category creation companies because I'm attracted to bleeding edge technology. And so I generally end up in a company that has an amazing capability, but it's a market disruptor and it's a challenge to the legacy, norms. And so I do end up in these situations. I also think I'm kind of drawn and fit to these situations because I'm a technologist and because I'm a technophile and because I love to be on the edge of thought leadership and solving tomorrow's problems and defining the standard for the way that we'll solve tomorrow's problems and leading people to new solutions. And so to me, it's a thought leadership thing. It's an education thing. It's not a near-term measurable, outcome. It's something you measure in years, and it's a long, hard-fought road. But when you hit the nerve, when you have the answer, you feel it. And so every
Yeah.
small yard every single person that you compel that there's a new way to solve a problem and that they don't have to make the same sacrifices they've been making in the past is super compelling and energizing, and it builds momentum, and then it builds advocates. And the other thing, I've ended up in a lot of developer focused companies or user focused companies where it's about groundswell. I've been in open source companies, right? So it's
Mm.
about delivering value first and then winning over your buyer. Your buyer becomes your seller, and you basically win by introduction, by referral, by by
Yes.
peer referrals. Again, I'll
Which is not
selfishly
a new thing, but like I love that you're mentioning it.
I'll give a selfish example, right? So like
Yeah.
we had a couple of years ago, we were bleeding edge technology.
Yeah.
And we were really just meant for the world's hardest problems, but we were out there solving the world's hardest problems, and that made a name for us. So an example is that the NFL was streaming the Super Bowl for the first time over the public internet, and people could just tap into the stream. And they were panicked because they had no idea how to make sure people were receiving that. The NFL broadcast, the Super Bowl is super critical. It's real time. If it's dropped, and you've lost, right? And so they had never before been able to measure this performance because you can imagine like trying to stick your arm into a tornado. It's just too much, too fast, and you can't get a reference point. And so we implemented our technology, and we were able to take 17 million streams across the internet, and we were able to visualize in seconds how that stream was performing. And so, that's kind of this world that we're all living in now, that every company now needs to be able to do this. And so anyway, back to the point of thought leadership, we kind of stuck the flag in the ground, and that became our marquee. Like, listen, do you know any technology that could do real-time visibility across 17 million streams across the internet? And people were like, absolutely not. That's impossible. And that started to drive this kind of, oh my God, you can solve this type of problem now. And that's what starts that thought leadership, and that's what builds this new category. So it's fun because, we, all of us in marketing, also work with analysts, and analysts work in decades. And so I was talking with a major analyst company, and they had this like 10, 15-year arc that data and data science was going to take. And we were on the precipice of the end of one, and they didn't know what was coming next. And they just knew it was going to be this hybrid technology approach. And as I started spelling out what we did and what we were enabling customers to do, it actually materialized for the analyst right there. Like, oh my God, that is the next architecture. So that's super fun. And when you get those signals, it's like, okay, this is a category. This is not the old category. And you start to see that, yeah, this is going to have legs, and it's a new chapter, in the product, or a new chapter in the market. So, but I love being on the edge of new markets.
Yeah, no, same. So then what do you think are the biggest mistakes companies make when they're trying to position themselves as category leaders?
uh, it's kind of about grounding yourself in
Yeah.
practical use cases, right? So it's fine to be a science project, but if you're not a science project that helps somebody with a persistent, immediate, valuable problem, then you're not producing value and you're not creating a market. And so you need to root your amazingly, blindingly differentiated capabilities and features with like definitive, measurable business impact today. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in market yet. That's the other thing. And you asked about a mistake. I see a lot of companies kind of go to market really fast and try and declare that they've changed the way business is going to be done. The truth is, proof's in the pudding. So you need to, you need to prove out your technology. You need your beachhead customers. You need your metrics and your ROI and your business value impact before you really start to turn the heat up. Is I
Yeah.
think what I'd recommend.
Yeah. So, having been involved in the launch of Dojo AI and Sumo Logic, both, agentic AI, obviously, I'm just letting the audience know, agentic AI security operations platforms, what did you take from that experience of it teaching you in terms of bringing AI products into market?
Yeah, it's a similar. So I was about 10 years ago. I was working with automation, what was called process automation, and it's the same thing. Like as a technophile, I'm very tech forward, and I'm on that risk aversion profile of almost bleeding,
Yeah.
and other where I think we make the assumption that everybody is and they're not. And so with AI, it's the same kind of thing that it's kind of like the boiling the frog in a pot of water. Like if you're going to take your hands off the wheel, think of auto driving cars. Okay, if you're going to take your hands off the wheel, you need a lot of trust that that thing is going to safely carry you and your family down the road at 90 miles an hour. And
Yeah.
so you need to implement AI in the least risky ways, but the highest output and value ways as possible. So you're kind of riding this curve. And Dojo AI and Sumo Logic is an example where we implemented AI initially just to allow the user to have a conversation with the data without having to be a data scientist. And then we kind of watched that. And then we started educating the user, not taking action, just educating the user and saying, hey, this is what we think it is. This is what we see. Then we started doing severity, and we started saying, hey, out of the 1,000 things that just happened, we think these 50 are like very critical and you should focus on these first, and just allowing them to kind of cut the noise and get to the important information as fast as possible. Then we started saying, okay, how about when something's wrong, how about you let AI go out and collect a bunch of information? Just collect information, do some research, and we're going to come back and show you all that research. Then the next step was, what if you let AI tell you what we think the fix is? And so then we started making remediation recommendations. And so like over time, the user was getting used to AI, starting to trust AI, starting to realize that AI was cutting research time, cutting 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes out of their job. And then all of a sudden having some faith and then seeing recommendations for how to fix it. And then maybe the human followed those recommendations. Oh my God, AI was right. It fixed it. I trust it a little bit more, a little bit more. And then over time, automating the things that are not going to take down your website or your company, and actually taking your hands off the wheel at, let's say, 25 miles an hour to use our analogy. And then over time, you're actually allowing AI to tell you when something's wrong. And maybe AI doesn't have to even tell you anymore. There's bleeding edge agentic security operations companies out there that are fully autonomous. They believe that no human should be involved whatsoever, and they actually believe in what's called proactive remediation, where they see something wrong, they go try and fix it, and they take action immediately. And so again, this goes back to new market penetration. Like that's probably too aggressive, and doing nothing is no longer an acceptable answer and not competitive, and you're going to lose to your competition that is using AI. And so it's kind of like an onboarding ramp up of autonomy and taking your hands off the wheel. I have a friend who just got the new Tesla, and he's, you literally don't even have to touch the wheel. You used to have to hold the wheel. Now you don't have to touch the wheel at all. This thing is driving. He said he does 60% autonomous driving, 40% human driving. And he
Wow.
that was unheard of even 2 years ago. That was unheard of. Yet here we are. So yes. So introducing AI product, it's like, to me, even if you trust it, even if you believe in it, even if you have the most compelling results, you're still dealing with a human being consuming your product, and it's still very scary to a lot of people to take their hands off the wheel. So so do it gradually.
So when talking about scary of people taking their hands off the wheel, I think a lot of people are still quite scared in terms of bringing in AI into their company and so on and so forth, right? Now, in terms of, messaging and marketing, I mean, AI has been such a buzzword and it's almost exhausting to hear over the last, 2 years.
Yep.
How do companies avoid turning AI into a generic buzzword when they're doing marketing, and really positioning it at the center of their conversation? Because a lot of the times what I feel as a marketer on in terms of helping clients develop out their positioning to get to market and understanding their ICP, I'm working with this one tech company that delivers tech, to clients in terms of, making sure that their websites don't get taken down and all that kind of stuff. But they were like, we got to throw up AI onto our website because it's what the general public understands. So what is your take on that? Because I think a lot of the times, clients are trying to get involved in the AI spectrum of things where they want to deliver because it's the new buzzword, and that's what everybody is understanding right now because it's the conversation. But how do you bring it down to base camp, if you will, to really get people to purchase what you're offering with understanding that you're doing AI without having it splash all
Yeah.
over your website?
Yeah. I mean, happily, I think we're just getting out of that buzzword bingo phase. A year ago,
Bingo phase.
I actually did a video from a floor of a huge tech conference. I can't, it was either reInvent or what was one of the majors, and my God, there was every single booth was stamped with AI driven. It was like the year of AI driven, and it was everywhere. And I was calling it AI washing back then, because honestly, nobody had even changed their product whatsoever. No new features or anything, nothing in production. Everybody was just stamping AI on everything.
Yeah.
I do, like back then, I obviously would have said that means nothing to your buyer or your listener. You need to talk about the value it's delivering. Nobody cares how it's being delivered. They care about what's the outcome. What are you actually changing in my life? AI doesn't tell me that, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I do think we're getting past that phase now where, for example, I have features coming out, products coming out where they are all AI driven. Like I think now we're at a point where it's assumed that there's AI inside. But again, caution to people assuming that everybody's AI first. I also see a ton of customers where we talked about this earlier, where the security team and data policies and compliance policies and legal policies and risk and terms and contracts, they're not ready yet. And so there's a lot of like people saying that everything's AI, but then when you go to sell something to a customer in production on their pride and joy data, the answer is not yet. And so, I think from a messaging perspective, I think we're past that point. As marketers, we have to resist that pull to sound like the cool kid on the block, because it's just following the lemmings. Like that is just such a way to get lost in the squelch and the noise in the market. And stay true to the value and the pain you're solving, and what your buyer describes your value as opposed to dressing it up with terms. The other thing that your question made me think about is how we as marketers make messaging, and how we as marketers use AI in our own jobs. And I'll be quick because I know this wasn't your direct question, but if we as marketers just log into a fresh open AI session or Claude session, it's not going to do great. It's going to produce 60%, 50% quality. You're going to have to re-edit the hell out of it, and you're going to always think that AI sucks. you, as marketers, we have to use AI. We have to learn how to use AI, and it's not the same as, it's not turnkey. And so in my teams, we went from AI adverse or literally AI phobia to being technically trained on how to make AI better at what we're asking it to do. And so, again, not to dive technical, but if you take OpenAI, if you take ChatGPT or Claude, and you train it as a marketer. So this is what we do. We feed in our brand profile. We feed in our messaging docs. We feed in our glossary. I feed in my visual design guide, all of my style guide, all of my fonts, all of my colors. And the result is day and night in terms of what it's producing for us, closer to finished product. It's not replacing my marketers, but man, it's now that it's tuned and it's customized for us, it is cutting hours and days out of our jobs.
It's not replacing your marketers, not to interrupt you. It's because all of those documents that you guys are building has to be
required.
built still by a human, and it has to be built by conversations and, you know,
discovery,
digging into things. And like one brand guy that I had on my platform, he was talking about brand therapy. It's really getting into the why of what somebody does, and it's not building a logo and putting
your ethos
on it.
Like AI can't feel your ethos, or your culture.
And that's still what's going to translate from human to human, even though you have the AIs running in the back end.
Okay, but now I'm really going to get to you. So get this. Now you've got to start writing your messaging docs and your brand guides and your brand profiles in a way that AI gets. So like now we
AI can help you with it.
Yes, that's right. You can ask it if you're missing what it needs to get its job done. That's absolutely right. But it's like we've come full circle. Now we're talking about internally writing for AI, but you know, we began by talking about externally writing for AI. But it's totally true. Totally true.
I love it. I love it. So here's an interesting question. What signals are going to matter when both humans and AI are evaluating a company?
Wow. You know what's, I don't know. I'll go on this journey with you. I certainly don't have the answer, but like if I followed my philosophy, they're the same.
Yeah.
They're the same thing that we want to be differentiated for and recognized for and loved for. And we want to attract the same things. It's the idea of the language we have to speak, right? But if I like go down that whole, that whole yogic journey, like ultimately it's our identity. Like our identity stays the same. Our promise stays the same. It's just a question of translating it so that each of these ecosystems can get their job done or get it as fast as possible. So it has to be done differently. But I think the answer is the same thing.
Sorry for my little fur animals and friends in the background, but
I have to. Agree. I closed my door. I said I'm not having that happen in this podcast.
So I want to talk a little bit about product-led and sales-led growth. So you have deep experience across both of them. How should companies decide which model fits them best?
I honestly would recommend every company think about both. Whether you're using both or not, okay, but think about both. The buyer's journey today, I mean, you probably have better stats than me, but it's flipped on its head. Every buyer, we actually talked about this today, every buyer is getting educated, recommended, and probably educated on which product to buy in a private session with an LLM. And so what that tells us is that the buyer's journey is 80-90% digital. By the time the buyer's interacting with a product company, they've actually already made their choice, and they're probably doing competitive shopping, like competitive pricing, And so the whole world is kind of tipped on its head, and it's a all digital experience. And so if you're not thinking product-led growth or digital-led growth, then you're missing the market today. Sales-led growth is still critically important, especially as you analyze your product and how your customer consumes your product. If it takes white glove service, if there's an implementation phase and a POC that has to happen, and the time to value is further down the road, then that sales-led experience is even more important. But I would argue that every consumer funnel today does not want to hear from the company until they ask to be heard to hear from the company. And so it's an on-demand experience. You want to have your sales team ready, but if they engage at the wrong time of the buyer funnel, they will destroy the purchase experience and they'll walk. Yeah. So it's to me, it's digital or PLG if you have a product-led product, but a digital-led growth is the norm. And then touching with humans at the right moment with the right information for exactly the stage that buyer's at, that is the new magic. So I spend a lot of time working on, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel assets, sure, but now figuring out exactly how to deliver those where the prospect's going to stumble on them in their own investigation and their own learning path. And then my BDRs or my sales teams are hitting right at the moment of consideration or right at the moment of technical differentiation. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. I think it's really a kind of both. But there's like if you have a large enterprise software companies, et cetera, they all strive
it's a larger
to be
ticket price.
Right, exactly. They strive to be product led, but it's more like product led value, proof of value, and then a sales led purchasing experience.
Yeah, because nobody's going to be making a $7,000, $8,000, $9,000
with a trial or credit card. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, there's going to be.
But if you can take, if you can take your 6-digit product and figure out a way to give a free experience or a credit card swiped $20 experience, like that is the art. Do that so that you're kind of getting them addicted to the value. And then, yeah, sure, it is a 6-digit enterprise license, multi-year blah, but they already know what you do. Maybe they've already run their own competitive trial internally, right? Like that's where you want to get.
It's hard with the trials, especially also with, a company where, you're allowing them to get access into and basically seeing everything, because some of these SaaS platforms on a B2B side, it's hard to just give a portion of what you're offering. But I think when it comes to tokenization, if you're building, a product that you have to just keep one-upping or to continue usage, then maybe the trial works there. But the trial is a challenging one. That's an interesting conversation.
It is. We could do a whole podcast on it. Also, unless you design your trials right, they're a blind spot. So like the user takes the thing and then goes and has their own experience, and you can't guide them.
They make their own judgments on it, and you haven't even given them the full scale. So I want to get into a little bit of practical takeaways here. As we're coming close to, I think we could sit on here for 3 hours. There's so much juice in this conversation. But for a founder or marketer leader listening, what is the one thing they should do to prepare for this agent-to-agent future?
Like I said, I think if you're an innovator and you're a brand new startup, I think there's going to be a class of startup that targets agent to agent as its own focused market space. So I think that's one piece is like, what if you were only focused on this emerging market, what would you build? Because like we've talked about this whole session, there's this duality going on. The startups, the truly kind of future focused startups are leaving the legacy in the past. You and I have talked about bridging legacy with today. But some startups may benefit from just going completely focused on the next generation ecosystem, because like we said earlier, there's not that many people doing that. But otherwise, I think it's just a summary of the chat we had today, where I think like a contemporary marketer, a contemporary product company, a contemporary founder needs to build a go-to-market muscle that just takes this into account as table stakes effectively. And so if I was to like think about adoption curves, today you're not doing your job if you're not thinking about GEO, like LLMs indexing your page, training their models on what you do, for whom, why you're different, right? Like that, to me, that's day job today. I still think the agent to agent stuff is just happening. We ran a survey that said that 30% of the market kind of groks what's going on, and 70% has no idea what's happening to them. And so, if you're a new startup, if you're a new founder, this is normal. Like this is your new current normal, is to think about LLMs and agents coming and running across your digital content. The other thing, just so everybody knows, and as well, as you're having a conversation with ChatGPT or with Claude, they train those models and then they close them off, right? So they like do a whole bunch of learning and then they publish the model. The model stops learning when they publish it. And so if you ask a question, so if ChatGPT has just deployed their last model a month ago, and you ask about something that happened last week, the LLM actually goes out to the internet to find the information live in that session. And that's a whole nother type of web traffic in technology that's called RAG. It's an augmented retrieval that the LLM is doing because it doesn't have the answer. So it actually has to go out and ask websites the question live for Michael or for Sasha right now to answer that question. And so that is another real-time LLM traffic that is like super important that we all master. But yeah, so I think those that is today must do. Agent to agent e-commerce is bleeding edge, but it's coming. You know, I think in a year we'll all be thinking about agent workflows across our digital properties, and then I think in 2 years this will be like an actual e-commerce, an economy that's
Sure.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How can smaller teams compete then with the technology landscape with everything moving so fast?
Believe it or not, smaller teams are at a huge advantage right now. I read an article that said if your startup is more than 3 years old, you might as well close up shop right now, because the developer investments and the architecture investments that companies have made, if they made them more than a year ago, you've already wasted a whole bunch of money and time. And so what at my company, what we're actually seeing is 2 and 3 person, sometimes 1 person developer teams just able to, out agile and out develop from a velocity perspective the traditional siloed engineering teams. And so today the small teams are winning. I mean, they're faster and they can execute quicker and they're so efficient. And there's just a totally new economy in terms of starting a software company today than it was even 12 months ago. It's just crazy to see the change.
No, absolutely. Last question in the tactical aspect of things, but what should every marketer and marketing leader be learning right now?
This was hard, and I said it a little earlier, but I'll explain it a little more. I mean, my marketing team is 180 degrees from where we were 6 months ago. My team only had consumer-based chats with LLMs. Like they were just asking ChatGPT. Today, every single marketer on my team is vibe coding and creating dynamic user experiences and user interfaces. We don't open a spreadsheet. We don't open a spreadsheet anymore. All of our funnel, all of our attribution, everything is vibe coded. I had a problem. Today's modern marketecture stack is like 45 small tools, and my data wasn't merging. I'll just name some names, but we had HubSpot over here, we had Zoom Info over here, we had Gong recording our calls. I had a BDR outreach system that was doing BDR outreach. None of it was talking. Salesforce, obviously, and then a business analytics tool. Nobody would talk. So I was talking to my business team and I said, hey, can you guys please get all this data in so I can have a single dashboard? And they were like, oh my God, we're so behind. It's going to be 8 months. And then I went to each vendor and I said, hey, can you I need a user interface in your product that does the following? Nope. So anyway, I finally end up with this really awesome future forward AI BDR company. And I asked him for the same thing. And he said, what are you talking about? My customers don't use my interface. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, everybody's vibe coding our interface for us. And so I forced myself that weekend. Again, I'm kind of more technical than your average marketer bear, but I forced myself that weekend to start literally vibe coding, like all the way deep vibe coding. And by the end of the weekend, I had created APIs to every one of those products, either MCP servers or otherwise, but I was basically coalescing all of their data into an application I had written, running analytics across it, building dashboards. I could see whether the BDR email mentioned the product. I could see whether the salesperson's conversation with the customer was on the same value proposition, all of that, all the way through to conversion funnel. So like, to me, it's about vibe coding. I hate to say it. And marketers need to be thinking about this. For most of the people listening, you just start with co-work. It's a very easy, consumable way to create these experiences that you don't have to be that technical for. But to me, it's a brand new architecture stack. A lot of it's going to be custom built. I've already replaced several vendors that were $30,000, $40,000 a year with in-house marketer built solutions, social media posting queues, and all kinds of stuff that, I think that's my recommendation. Every marketing team needs to rethink their software stack.
Love it. Love it. Well, Michael, it's been amazing. Such
So
a great
fun,
conversation.
Sasha.
So fun.
Thank you.
But before we let you go, I want to do our rapid fire closeout. So
Okay.
whatever comes to mind, just shoot away. So one word that defines the future of marketing. Don't say AI.
Totally different than today. I'll say that.
Yes. One habit every marketer leader should build in the age of AI.
I think we just covered that one, but don't be scared. Like, you really have to overcome the paranoia and start to use these things. And we talked about this, adopt it slowly in low risk ways. Don't expect it to completely take your marketing job over, but you need to start using it because it's going to be a part of your life.
Completely agree. One myth about AI, data, or go-to market that people need to stop believing.
That it's going to replace humans. I loved the conversation that you and I had, the moment when you were saying, like, no AI is going to understand your culture or your ethos or your brand promise. And so, yeah, the myth is that we're all done for. Like, this is taking care of a lot of tactical toil. It's going to cut hours out of our jobs, but it's not replacing humans.
I completely agree. Thank you for saying that. Michael, it's been great. Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
We'll link all the details below of how to find you, the company, and all of that good stuff so people can get in touch. But thank you again.
Thanks for having me, Sasha.